The Andy Poland Show.
We got to go after this with everything we got, figuring they're going to come with everything they got.
I'll start off by saying I'm bored, I'm broke, and I'm back.
The Andy Poland Show on ESPN 630 starts right now.
There are some great days in D.C. sports history, like, for example, June 7th of 78, when the Washington Bullets won the NBA championship. June 7th of 2018, when the Washington Capitals won the Stanley Cup. There was the Nationals winning the World Series, October 30th of 2019. Any of the three Super Bowl championships for the Redskins. And tragic days, like the death of Len Bias and the death of Sean Taylor. But there is no weirder day in Washington sports history than November 18th. And the eeriness of that date is incredible. I'll get to the details on that in just a moment. The Commanders cut a kicker. The Capitals won a game last night with Ovi getting 903. But if you look back on November 18th, and it was 40 years ago today, when not only was it the most famous, I think, injury in Washington sports history, it's among the most famous injuries ever in the National Football League. And the Washington Redskins were hosting the New York Giants. Now, Joe Theismann was not having a great year in 1985. He had volunteered to punt in a game earlier that year against the Chicago Bears when the punter got hurt, and he punted it 1 yard. And his play was not up to where it had been certainly 2 years before when he was the offensive MVP of the league. And there were some questions as to whether he was going to be benched or not. Well, there were no further questions, unfortunately, after that night, November 18th of 1985, when Lawrence Taylor, the best defensive player in the league at that time, jumped on a pile and snapped Joe's leg like a pencil. And I'm laughing, it's not funny, but ABC was using new technology, reverse angle cameras. And the camera that showed the injury from the angle that it did, we couldn't see what happened under the pile. The reverse angle camera showed that leg snapping just like a pencil. And there was a question whether they were going to show it coming out of commercial. And finally, the decision was made that they would. And so, it was Frank Gifford who said, I don't know if you want to see this or not, but we're going to show it to you. And we saw that. And that was the end of Joe Theismann's career. He had surgery. They did not insert a rod into the broken leg, which is kind of standard procedure now. And when it healed, it healed at an angle, and he had one leg shorter than another and could not finish his career. Then comes 2018, Alex Smith. They had traded for Alex Smith in the offseason after they had completely bungled the Kirk Cousins contract situation, so they let Kirk walk. And they bring in Alex Smith, veteran guy who had lost his job in Kansas City to Patrick Mahomes, who was ready to take over. But, there was plenty of tread left on the tire for Alex Smith. And then he suffered at the same end zone. Now, they were in different stadiums at that point. They were playing then in what was called FedEx Field. It was not RFK. But J.J. Watt of the Houston Texans, probably the best defensive player in the league at that time, he jumped on Alex Smith's leg and broke it in much the same manner. And Alex almost lost his leg. Joe did not. Joe, they avoided infection with him. And, sadly, it didn't heal the way he wanted it to or what anybody would want it to. But it was not something where he was in danger of losing his leg. Alex Smith almost lost his leg. And if you saw the video, the E60 that ESPN produced on this, it is one of the most gruesome things you will ever see. And he incredibly made it back to play 5-6 games in the 2020 season, not wanting to be taken off the field, ending his career the way it did. But same day, it was 33 years later, and it was a very similar injury at the same end of the field. And here's another eerie part of this. Jay Schrader came off the bench and replaced Theismann. And I think the Giants were essentially shocked by what they had seen. And Schrader, with virtually no experience, beat them 23-21. When Alex Smith got hurt, they wound up losing that game 23-21. Same score, same end of the field, same injury, same type of player inflicting the damage. And while the Washington team in 1985 went on to finish 10-6, they missed the playoffs. Washington in 2018, still the Redskins, they won only one more game the rest of the year, and that was with Josh Johnson at quarterback. And Josh Johnson won at Jacksonville 16-13. It's the only start in his, 15, 16-year NBA, NFL career where he's been everywhere that he actually won a start. That's the one start of his career that he won, and it was the one game they won after the gruesome injury to Alex Smith. All right, enough on that, and enough to make your stomach sick on this Tuesday morning. But that is history, and that is bizarre Washington history. When you say November 18th, if you know your Redskins history, you can't think about the eeriness of the two broken legs on the same day to the starting quarterbacks. All right. This was kind of a foregone conclusion after what happened in Madrid on Sunday with Matt Gay missing a 51 and a 56-yard field goal that would have won the game with 15 seconds to go. And he's been around long enough to, I think, understand that it was the end, and did do the stand-up thing and talk to reporters on Sunday in Madrid about the two misses.
It was a dream to come to the stadium and play here. Obviously, things took a turn real quick. Ended on a pretty negative note there. So, feeling pretty upset, pretty down about it. Let the team down here today. Not just one, but two kicks today. So the game changes if I make those kicks. So, man, just sucks.
Matt, on that 51-yarder, did it feel as good as the 56-yarder off your foot in your?
Both of those felt really good. Again, I get a warm up. The ball was coming off the foot really, really well today, and for whatever reason, didn't go my way. So I don't know what lesson this is going to teach me, but it's going to teach me something, and I'm going to come out stronger from this, and hopefully have other opportunities to go out there and play.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, hopefully turned into this from Dan Quinn yesterday.
Adam and I visited with Matt today. Matt has been a fantastic teammate here, Tom, and like an all-time good dude. So, yeah, really bummed that it didn't work out, yeah, we just felt, hey, this is the change that we needed, and just kind of make all decisions. Hey, this is what we think at this time is the best decisions for the team when they're hard, like this one, because of who the person is. It makes it especially difficult, but you still have to make the decisions you think are best for the whole team.
So that is the life of a kicker. Exit Matt Gay, who came in this year with a guaranteed contract, $4.5 million for a kicker. And it made sense because last year was a kicking mess. With all the success that they had, winning 12 games, they just couldn't get a kicker. They had signed Brandon McManus in the offseason going into 2024, but then a civil suit surfaced from a couple of flight attendants who had been on the flight with Jacksonville. He played the last few years in Jacksonville, and he was accused of sexual harassment. Well, this is an organization which couldn't deal with that, so Brandon McManus was cut. He's wound up catching on with Green Bay, and he's been very good there, but Washington had to move on to get a kicker, so they get Ramiz Ahmad. He doesn't last very long. Riley Patterson comes in. He doesn't last. Cade York, I believe they gave up a draft pick to Cleveland to get him. He didn't last. Austin Siebert came in. Austin Siebert was good for a while. Then he started to falter. Enter Zane Gonzalez. So it's McManus, Ahmed, Patterson, York, Siebert, Gonzalez, all last year. So they go, okay, enough of this Michigas. Let's get Matt Gay in here on a guaranteed contract. He's a veteran kicker. He's done a good job in other places. Let's go with that. And he wound up hitting 4 of 10 outside of 50 yards, and you just can't miss from 51 and 56 indoors like he did. And he got his walking papers yesterday. Who takes his place? Jake Moody. Jake Moody, you may remember, was the kicker for the Bears who made the game-winning kick in that Monday night game, which has touched off the 6-game losing streak. So round and round we go in the kick and go round. Nothing quite like what we had in 2000. 2000 was the year of going for it. The Fortune 500 Redskins cost a fortune, finished 500. The kicking carousel that year included Brett Conway, who got hurt early in the year. Rather than wait for him to heal, they cut him. In comes Eddie Murray. Eddie Murray, older kicker. He'd been there before. Hayden Last, Michael Husted, Chris Hepner, Scott Bentley finally came in, and Scott Bentley actually kicked a 50-yard field goal. But that was the year of the kicking around. And had they had a reliable kicker, the way some of these games went, they might have actually been a playoff team. But because they lost a bunch of close games, because kickers either couldn't hit extra points or field goals, and that's when extra points were, pretty much gimmies. That's before they moved it back. Thus, the 5 kickers from 2000, and now a year and a half into the Dan Quinn tenure, we are on kicker number 8. So let's see if Jake Moody can make it through the last 6 games, and maybe if he does successfully, he'll be the kicker next year. Now, you had heard Quinn say this going into the game last week, that they were going to have an update on Jaden Daniels and what the circumstances will be for the last 6 games of the season. We knew he wasn't going to play last week against Miami, but would there be a chance that we would see him the rest of the year? He's done this before, where he said, oh, yeah, I'll have an update, and then it comes time for an update. This was pretty typical of an update from Dan Quinn on Jaden Daniels.
I'll have a better update in terms of coming back from the bye. The rehab portion is going good of where he's at, and but past that, I'll have a better update for you guys a week from today with he and Noah and Terry and some others that are on the way back.
Okay, so we do know that Noah Brown was working out. He did make the trip to Madrid and was working out. Terry McLaurin did some light work when he was there. There is some video of Jaden Daniels doing some running around. So by the time we get to the 30th, or before the 30th is the next game, we'll have an update probably on all 3 of them. By the way, that there was a chance that game was going to be flexed out of a night game, the Sunday night game. That's not going to be the case. So that will be on national TV, and this is not a good matchup because Denver right now might be the best team in the league. They just beat Kansas City. They're 9-2. They've won 8 in a row, and they can score. So this could be ugly. But that's what we're going to see on national TV on the 30th. As for what happens the rest of the way, dead season walking with only 3 wins and 8 losses. This is Dan Quinn yesterday.
I use the phrase "what's next" for a reason because it's literally the only thing we have some influence over. So as emotionally pissed or disappointed or just outraged about how that's gone, we don't have any space to change that. But we do have a chance to influence what's next. So in that way, if you think about it, there's a lot to get your mindset and your approach up, because if you just sit in the other stuff, it's not going to get you any better, Scott. I just know that. And so everybody's frustrated, mad, disappointed, all those emotions. I hate that we're going through it, but it is important to learn how to navigate this. This is life as a professional ball player, and on and off the field, it'll set us up because the young people that are going through that as players, you don't like it, but this is the adversity that sucks. And there's lessons that may be applied in 26 or 27 that's happening now that they can't even see that yet, man. But you just battle with it, Scott. And that's how we intend to do it. But what's next is, hey, how do we get better? What can we do? If I take that approach and they take that approach, then I think you got a chance to work yourself through it, which is important to learn how to navigate. Trust me, I don't want to learn how to lose. I want us to learn how to get ourselves through tough spots.
It's Dan Quinn as they take the week off. Next time we'll hear from Quinn is next Monday. That's adversity that you're overcoming in terms of injuries, in terms of losses. Much different adversity overcome by the Dallas Cowboys last night as they won their game at Vegas. Now, Vegas is a bad team. There's no question. In fact, the last Washington win was in early October against Vegas. They're inept, and I would really be surprised if Pete Carroll comes back next year. But anyway, Dallas won the game 33-16. Dak Prescott threw 4 touchdown passes. But the biggest thing about this game is, and Dallas was coming off a bye, that they had to deal with the horrible, horrible loss of a teammate, Marshawn Nealand, who in his last game had blocked a kick and recovered it in the end zone. And, from the pregame feature that was done by Laura Oakman, he appeared to be, and we don't know people, but he appeared to be a very happy person. And tragically, he committed suicide. He was 23, 24 years old. And everybody was wearing these Marshawn Kneeland T-shirts last night to remember him. And they had his jersey, which they had in the locker room. They took it out on the field after the game, and they had a team meeting earlier in the week. They had dealt with grief counselors. They had a candlelight vigil, all those things to try to get through just the worst possible imaginable thing that could happen, to lose a teammate in that way or any way, but certainly to the tragic loss of suicide to such a young and vibrant person. So in winning this game, they showed a lot of fortitude there. And this was Buck and Aikman with their usual visit with Scott Van Pelt after the game, with the two of them discussing how Dallas came out with the kind of emotion that they did and the ability to rack up 33 points in the win.
Troy mentioned it early that he thought they would be spirited and come into this ball game with a full head of steam and a lot of pep. And, they go 3 and out, then they get a fumble, and it's like, man, what is this night going to bring for the Dallas Cowboys? Is it going to be more of the same? And then from that moment on, as you just went through the highlights, I mean, they just put the pedal down, and it was a full team effort. I think that's the biggest part, is I think the defense looked different than it did their last game where we were there on Monday night with the faces that are back and the new faces that are brought in. Offense did what it's done when they've won ball games, put up points, and, even the special teams, which they've always got an advantage with Brandon Aubrey. So it was just a full team win at the end of a long 10-day stretch.
Hey, Joe, you made the point on the broadcast. I believe the correct number is 6 different faces who were on the field on the defensive side in this game that were not in that Arizona game. And Troy, we made the point on Countdown just how bad they've been defensive ranking-wise. You add those pieces, even though the schedule does ramp up significantly, many of those games are at home. And I don't think you have to squint too hard to see that maybe they could sneak in and on the back end of that NFC playoff picture. Does that seem reasonable to you?
Reasonable
Maybe?
might be a stretch right
That's
now,
fine.
but I do think that the Raiders obviously have been struggling on offense.
No doubt.
I mean, so this was not a good test. But with that said, they're better on defense. I mean, you put Quinnen Williams on your defense, you're going to be better. And then with Logan Wilson and the other DeMarvion Overshone, he's going to be getting healthier again as he moves through and getting in better playing shape. All of that. This defense is, if they just get to the middle of the pack, they can go out and they can compete against Philadelphia and Kansas City and Detroit in those games, regardless of where they're being played at. So, I mean, the offense looked good tonight. Everything did. The real tests are ahead of them, as we know. Yep. But they could certainly get on a run. I mean, you got to look at they got to get to 10 wins is what you've got to look at, and they don't have any margin for error. So this was a game they obviously had to win, and they got to win next week against Philadelphia.
Yeah, the next 3: Philadelphia at home, Kansas City at home, and then at Detroit. I got to figure you got to win 3 of those or 2 of those 3 games to have a shot. Now they got the Commanders on Christmas Day here. Which is looking like a big win. I mean, this is now really an awful matchup for Washington because Dallas's offense is so good and Washington's defense is so bad. But if you like the Cowboys, you had a big night. If you hate the Cowboys, you're gnashing your teeth. Also, a nice gesture by the Raiders last night. In the pregame warmups, they wore shirts that said "Call an Audible" on the front. And on the back, it read 988, which is the number to dial for the suicide and crisis lifeline. My sister is a volunteer on the suicide hotline, and it is just so important to talk to people, even if it seems like it's something that they don't want to talk about. But look at the warning signs. I think that's the key. And I don't even know if there were any warning signs in this particular case with Marshawn Kneeland. And the feature that was done by Laura Oakman in the not Laura Oakman, it was Joe Buck's wife. Whatever her name is, she did a feature on this, and Beisner, Michelle Beisner Buck is her name, and she did an excellent feature on the person that he seemed to be and was on the outside, obviously not so on the inside. All right, coming up, Nationals introduced their new manager. And let me say this: it's a good thing he had stubble on his face because that answers the question: is he old enough to shave? It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630.
The Andy Pollin Show on ESPN 630, the sports capital.
If you're just jumping in your car, I started the show with this odd anniversary, November 18th. It was 40 years ago today that Joe Theismann's leg was broken on the RFK turf by Lawrence Taylor. And then 33 years later to the day, Alex Smith suffered a very similar injury, a broken leg against the Houston Texans with J.J. Watt, equally as imposing as Lawrence Taylor as a defender, breaking his leg. And while it didn't end Alex Smith's career, it almost ended his leg. They almost had to amputate. They did not, and he made it back. Theismann did not, and he may be the only one to I don't think celebrate, but maybe commemorate an anniversary like that. He put out on Twitter this morning, 40 years ago today was the night my football career ended. It only seems like yesterday that I had a chance to play in front of our great fans. Thank you for all the memories. So, that was nice of Joe to remind everybody what happened on that night. So, yesterday, the Nationals introduced the new manager, Blake Butera. Now you say, well, didn't they announce that, like weeks ago? Yeah, they did. The problem was the day that they hired him, it's not a problem, but his daughter was born. So he was in North Carolina, and he wasn't going to, come up here. He wanted to be, of course, with his wife and daughter, so they delayed it. Blair was born October 30th, and he signed the contract the following day. But they finally got around to the news conference yesterday, which I watched online, and you can watch it yourself. You can find it on YouTube. I know I'm an older guy. I understand that. I'm old enough to be the father of both the general manager and the new manager, and probably a good portion of the staff. So I get it. But if you look at it, they're sitting side by side. And he's got Butera wearing a Nationals jersey, his new Nationals jersey. By the way, he's going to wear number 10. And on the sleeve is the sponsor patch for a guy he's very thin, which I think helps to make him look younger. But he's 33 years old, brand new father, and he's got an AARP patch on his sleeve. Yeah, that's the corporate sponsor. So it's just an odd look. It looks like the fraternity president introducing the newest pledge, but it is what it is. And so Paul Taboni, the very handsome and dark-haired general manager, just turned 35, was asked when he knew that young Blake Butera was his guy.
We had Blake's name circled. I don't even think I had called Eric Neander to ask permission to interview him. And I got a call from Mike Piazza, and he basically said, like, hey, I have no idea what you guys are doing with your search, but, like, there's this guy that you got to interview, and he mentioned Blake's name, which I was thinking to myself, like, okay, if Mike Piazza's thinking that to himself, given his background and his experiences, everything, like, we were kind of thinking it a little bit. And then the more we dug on Blake, like, and I've said this before, but it doesn't matter whether it was the first-year analyst or the person that's been in baseball for 50 years. They all have a tremendous amount of respect and trust for Blake, which is something I thought a lot about. We thought a lot about over the course of the whole process. And then I think just Blake mentioned visiting him down in Raleigh. Like, I think there's something to be said for spending a whole day together, right? And, like, you're kind of, like, towards the end of the day, we're sitting in the car together, and I was thinking to myself, like, I could probably spend another 2 hours in this car, and it's like 11 p.m. or whatever it was. It's a small thing, but in my opinion, it's actually a really big thing because we're going to be spending so much time around each other, right? Like, if you're itching to get out of that car, like, there's probably something up, right? So, that was, and I'm sure there were probably 10 aha moments in between that first one and maybe the last one as part of the process, but those are two that stick out.
The Piazza connection, if you aren't familiar with that, he was the manager of Team Italy in the 2023 World Baseball Classic, and Butera was the bench coach. So, Piazza's about my age. No, he's a little younger, but let's say he's definitely in his 50s. And he had a very young bench coach with him who he liked very much. This was Butera as he was introduced, and he had his little prepared speech with him, talking about the identity that he hopes to establish as the new manager of the Nats.
As we move forward, our identity is going to start with character. I believe true leadership is built on real relationships, relationships that create unity, clarity, and a shared purpose. And all that begins with accountability. For myself, for our staff, for every player that wears this Nationals jersey, we're going to hold each other to a standard every single day. We're going to be committed to our process and a daily standard of performance. That means focusing on improvement and excellence one day at a time, trusting that consistency is going to help us build something sustainable, not just for 1 year, but for several years ahead. We're going to be committed to our process. On the field, you can expect a team that plays with intent. We're going to be fundamentally strong. We're going to do things the right way. We're going to play the game the right way and handle all the small details. We want our fans to feel connected to the way we play and to take pride in the identity that we show every night. DC is an incredible sports city. It's passionate, it's knowledgeable, and they're hungry for a winner. We're in this together, and our commitment as a staff is to represent this city with pride. We want to play a brand of baseball that reflects the toughness, competitiveness, and the spirit of the people who support us. We're currently building an elite coaching staff. In my opinion, the best coaches are teachers, mentors, and leaders that are able to get the most out of every single player in this organization.
Yeah, we'll get to the staff in a minute. This is just a personal thing. When you're giving a speech to the media, show us kind of what you do with the players. When he talks to the players, is he going to have something written out like that? I don't know. You know, look, this guy could be a great success, and you have to give him the opportunity to do that. It just feels to me as a person who's closer to 70 than 60 that this is odd. This is an odd thing. Maybe it's the way baseball is going, and you're seeing a lot of inexperienced managers getting their first shot. Some of it has to do with the analytics, that they're kind of told what to do based on how the analytics lay out and all that. But it just, you know, give me Earl Weaver and a pack of cigarettes and trying to get the 3-run inning, you know, the 3-run homer. That's the baseball that I grew up with. But, okay, it's a changing game. Obviously, there were questions about his age and his experience.
When you talk with players, when you work with players, I think the last thing they look at is how old or young somebody might be. I think what's most important to them is, do you care about them as a person first, and are you going to do everything you can to help them become the best version of themselves, both on and off the field? And I think people can accomplish that in different ages and different experiences, and I think that's most important, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's your opinion as a 33-year-old, because I can tell you this. I can't imagine that a player who's 38 years old is going to look at his 33-year-old manager and say, wow, I gotta collect all the knowledge I can from this guy. Yeah, there's a level of respect, and there's a way you handle people, and I have worked for bosses who have been younger than me. I understand that. But I don't think you can generally say age doesn't matter in this. I just don't think that's the case. And Mark Zuckerman, who has covered the Nats ever since they moved here from Montreal in 2005, now with Masson, asked a key question, not just about the experience that he brings as a manager, but the experience that he'll bring with his coaching staff.
For you, what's the balance between wanting to bring in experience that you don't have personally versus finding others who might have the same kind of youthful and minor league experience and teaching kind of experience?
Yeah, I don't think we really set out to either hire for or not for experience. I think what was first and foremost was we wanted to make sure we brought in people that align with our values. We wanted people that would help hold each other accountable, would come in with a tremendous amount of a work ethic, and make sure they were in this thing for the right reasons. At the end of the day, our job is to help these players get better and create something that's sustainable for a really long time and successful. Regardless of age, I think that was most important to me when we were building out a staff, is to make sure there's people in here that are going to help our players reach their ultimate potential.
Hey, Blake, congratulations. My name is Eric Flack. I work with the local CBS here, Channel 9. One more on the age thing. I wonder, first and foremost, do you think about it as much as people like me do? And do you approach a conversation holding somebody accountable, not playing the game that you want it to be played, with somebody who is 3 years your senior as opposed to 3 years your junior?
Yeah, to your point about the tough conversations, I think looking at it from that lens, you create the relationship first. And I know I've said that a few times, but it's really important to me to create the relationship, create the trust, so where player, regardless of age, experience, understands where you're coming from with a certain message. And I think one thing for me as well is I've tried to put myself in positions and situations where I've coached or worked with players that were, future Hall of Famers or players that had played one day professionally, right? And I think some experiences in winter ball and then also the World Baseball Classic with players like Vinny Pasquantino and Matt Harvey, and then working alongside Mike Piazza, like gaining their respect was really important to me. So I think looking back at that, it's you create the relationships first and make sure they understand you care about them and are going to do whatever you can to help them succeed.
And I understand why he has an answer like that, but let's look at this realistically. Now, the World Baseball Classic is what, a few weeks? The grind of a Major League Baseball season, where you have the ups and downs, and you have to, as they say, not lose the clubhouse. There's going to be some things that are going to happen here, and there are going to be some veterans who maybe even leaking out things like, the guy's never even been a base coach in the major leagues before. His managerial experiences in A-ball. This is the major leagues, baby. We've been here. Some of us have been here 10 years plus, and we got this wet behind the ears kid here who apparently is really, really smart. But there are certain things that you learn over the course of time that can't be replaced by, really being smart about analytics and the modern game and all that. I just think, again, I'd be happy to be wrong on this. I'm a Nats fan. I love to watch the Nats play and the Nats win. But it just, again, and maybe it's age prejudice because of my age, but I watch this news conference and I think, this is a guy who's younger than my son, love my son. Is my son ready to be a major league manager? No. He's coaching the middle school basketball team right now, which is a pretty good level for him. Could he coach at high school level? Probably. Could he coach in college? No. He just doesn't have the experience to do that. And maybe this guy does. Maybe Blake Butera is going to be the great young manager. He's going to be the new Tony La Russa. Maybe not. And it doesn't feel right to me. And that's my age prejudice. I grant you that. But if you're asking me now, in the middle of November, what's this going to look like when we get to August? I don't have a really rosy picture at this point. Happy to be wrong, but that's just my view of this. On top of this is a Chelsea Jane story from yesterday that she writes, multiple people familiar with the organization's plans suggested the team needed to hire about 40 positions on the baseball side this offseason. We're not that far from spring training. What are we, 3 months away from spring training? And you got to get all these people in place. On the staff, we have the manager, Blake Butera. We have the bench coach, Michael Johns, who's the ripe old age of 50. Thank God for that. The pitching coach, Simon Matthews, I think he's also in his early 30s. Catching coordinator, Bobby Wilson. Sean Doolittle is staying. He's under 40, and he's at least a link to the past. So Sean Doolittle is sticking around. They don't quite have his role defined, but he's some type of a pitching assistant. Last year, she writes, the Nationals also had a pitching strategist, assistant hitting coach, bullpen coach, first base coach, and third base coach on the staff. So far, those roles have not officially been filled. It's not clear whether the team will have any new positions on the big league staff beyond that. They've had some departures. Miguel Cairo, who is the interim manager, he is expected to join the Orioles staff. Darnell Coles has a job to become the Braves assistant hitting coach on Walt Weiss's staff. And they have to add a bunch of people. There's this, too, with the Nationals, and they've had a long history of this. This goes back to the early days of ownership of the team when Kenny Rosenthal actually wrote about this, that they were grumbling about how many baseballs they had to buy. These are people who made their money in the shopping mall business. They're not baseball people. And we'll see if they spend the money necessary to build the kind of organization that they need to build. I mean, you've got all these young guys getting their first shot, like 35-year-old Paul Taboni and 33-year-old Blake Butera, and they're all full of piss and vinegar. We have a vision. They've never done it before. And there's always a learning curve in anything you do. And I don't care that, Taboni had this great experience with the Boston Red Sox and Butera has been with the Tampa Bay Rays, who are known for doing more with less and all that. But, I think that there's going to be some growing pains. There's going to have to be growing pains. And even if you had a veteran manager come in, you'd have some. But probably they're going to be more with this group than you might expect because of the fact that they're all doing it for the first time. You'd like to have somebody in there. You'd like to have somebody who's been a major league manager before. Maybe on the bench, kind of like Don Zimmer was for many years with Joe Torre. And Joe Torre had been a manager before. He had not been a highly successful manager. He'd taken the Braves to the playoffs. Things hadn't worked out in a couple of other stops for him. And then he winds up with the Yankees, but was smart enough to have the old sage Zimmer on the bench next to him. Just something to keep an eye on. All right, coming up, much more on the Commanders and the kicking situation as a new kicker comes in, and perhaps the worst movie ever made, released 45 years ago today. It's the Andy Pollin Show, ESPN 630. There will be cash rebates if you can name all the Washington kickers over the last year and a half. I've got them written down. Brandon McManus, Ramiz Ahmed, Riley Patterson, Cade York, Austin Seibert, Zane Gonzalez, Matt Gay, and now Jake Mosley. Come on down. 8 kickers in the year and a half that Dan Quinn has been the coach. There were 5 in 2000. Brett Conway, Scott Bentley, Eddie Murray, Michael Husted, and Chris Hepner. They finished 8-8. This team ain't finishing 8-8. But they are now on their second kicker and their 8th in the last year and a half. It is just remarkable what has gone on with this team and injuries on top of that. I mean, you could say whatever you want about how Adam Peters didn't do a good job of having enough depth on this roster. I don't think anybody could have imagined this kind of glut of injuries. As John Keim pointed out the other day, the game in Madrid, they had 10 starters, 10 players who were supposed to be starters throughout the season when it began, not playing at all in that game. Most notably, Jaden Daniels, who could play again this year. Dan Quinn said that there would be an update this week. It's not going to be this week. He's pushed it to next week, so we'll know more about it. I would expect him to play. Terry McLaurin is pretty close to returning, and Noah Brown, who never plays. I think he's played in 1 game this year. May be finally ready to go. They will play the next game on the 30th. That'll be a week from Sunday. It's still a night game. There was some thought that it might be flexed out since Washington is so bad. But I think having Denver in prime time is something that they want to do. They could be the best team in the AFC. And so that will remain as a night game on November 30th. Speaking of night games, last night, and with what Dallas did coming back from the awful tragedy of teammate Marshawn Nealon committing suicide, that they were able to get things back together, whether the bye week was a help or hindrance. It was not a hindrance for them on the field last night as they took care of the Raiders in Vegas 33-16 with Dak Prescott throwing 4 touchdown passes. It reminded me of the Sean Taylor tragedy, which happened in 2007. It was right about this time of year. The week before Thanksgiving, Washington was playing a game in Tampa, which they lost. It was their 3rd straight loss, and Sean Taylor was not with the team. He had, I believe, a hamstring injury and had stayed at his home in the Miami area. And he did not live in a gated community. And there had been some kids who had been at a birthday party that he had thrown for his sister sometime earlier, and Sean Taylor kept a lot of jewelry and cash around his house. And the people that broke in thought that he wasn't there. Thought, well, they're playing a road game in Tampa. He's not in Miami. Let's break in. There's going to be nobody home. And Sean Taylor was in fact home. He came out of his room with a sword. They had a gun. They were kids. I think most of them were under 17. And one of them shot him in the leg, and he bled out. And he lingered for a couple of days. The incident happened Sunday night. He died, I believe, Tuesday morning. And I just remember this was just an unbelievable period of time in this city. I was on the air. We had a lot of network programming then on the other station, like I believe Mike and Mike or the morning show. We knocked that out. I was on the air constantly for about 3 days. I don't even think I showered. It was just a horrible, horrible period of time. And Washington had to play a game the following Sunday. It was the Sunday of Thanksgiving weekend. It was a 1:00 game against Buffalo. So this is only 4 days after the death of their teammate, and they know that the following day they're all getting on a chartered plane and going down to Miami for Sean Taylor's funeral. This is hanging over them. And Greg Williams was the defensive coordinator. This was the last year that Joe Gibbs coached the team. And unbeknownst to Gibbs, which he mentioned this later, Williams decided to start the game on defense with only 10 players as a tribute to Sean Taylor. And I believe that that Buffalo picked up like 8 yards on the play. And compounding things was Gibbs saying after the game, I didn't really know he was going to do that. He didn't say, I'm going to discipline Greg Williams, but that was a bad feel. And then on top of that, at the end of the game, and this is where people began to say, old Coach Joe, time to go, because this was on their way to their 4th loss. He called back-to-back timeouts to ice kicker Ryan Lindell, which resulted in a 15-yard penalty, which moved him closer. So a 50-plus field goal, which was a much longer field goal thought of in those days, for sure, would have been 51 yards. Makeable, but still 51 yards, became 36 yards. And that's pretty much what an extra point is now. Lindell makes the kick. Gibbs said after the game that the referee told him he could use back-to-back timeouts. If that's the case, the referee lied to him, and then took the responsibility. It was his fault that he did it, and that looked like as much gloom as you could possibly have. And on top of that, after this horrible loss to the Buffalo Bills, it was a gray, cloudy day. It was just awful, and everybody was still, fans and players, still very much in mourning for Sean Taylor. They have to get on a plane, go to the funeral. On top of that, the schedule is such that they have to play 4 days later. There's a Thursday night game against the Chicago Bears. So they go to the funeral on Monday. They get back, I guess, late Monday night. They have to have meetings, light walkthrough, whatever they do on Tuesday. Wednesday is the last walkthrough, and they play the game on Thursday. On top of that, Jason Campbell gets hurt, starting quarterback. Knee injury, knocked out of the game. In comes Todd Collins. He's hardly played. Collins goes 15 of 20 for 224 yards, throws 2 touchdowns. Washington beats Chicago 24-16. They go from 5-7 to winning the last 4, including that one with Todd Collins as quarterback, and they make the playoffs. The season ends with a playoff loss in Seattle, but the fact that team got off the floor after all that tragedy and the horrible death of Sean Taylor and the 4 straight losses and having to schlep to Miami and back and play a game of 4 days later and then win it with a backup quarterback and go the rest of the way with a backup quarterback, really a remarkable thing. Now, Dallas has a similar task here going the rest of the way because they've got really tough games coming up, and this is 5 wins. It's probably going to take 9 to get into the playoffs, which means you got to win 4 of the last 6, and the next 3 home games against Philadelphia and Kansas City, and then at Detroit. That's a tough gauntlet for them. Good defensive teams. Dallas's offense is awesome. Their defense has gotten a little bit better, but not I don't think a playoff defense. Anyway, after all of that emotion and all the things that they went through with the bye week and the candlelight vigil, and they printed up T-shirts to remember Marshawn Needland last night, Brian Schottenheimer, the coach of the Cowboys, delivered a very emotional speech to his team after the victory.
Before we do all the celebration stuff, Before we do all the celebration stuff, hold on. So proud of you guys, man. Amen. Tough couple weeks. We made them proud. You guys made them proud, man. Unbelievable. All right, here we go. I'm back. I'm good. I'm back. All right, here we go. Dad got touchdown CD? Yeah. Dad got touchdown Fergie? Yeah. Dad got touchdown GP? Yeah. Dad got touchdown to Flo? Yeah. All right. Marquise Bell had an interception. Okay. Yeah. And the ball was deflected by K9. Yeah. Sacks. Hey. Kenny Clark had a half sack. Yeah. Big Q had a half sack. Okay. James Houston had a sack. Yeah. Quentin Williams had a sack. Yeah. Ose had a sack. Yeah. Aubrey had a 50-yard field goal. Yeah. Hey, and then, hey, Easy had a safety. Yeah. Hey, so proud of you guys. Enjoy it. Shower up. Let's get on that plane.
Man, love y'all boys. Let's win and play together. We're going to rock like that for the rest of the year. Come on. Let's go, man. Family on me, family on three. 1, 2, 3. Hey.
Scott Van Pelt doing the pre and the post game on the field. Talked to Dak Prescott, who had the 4 touchdown passes in the win.
The man on your shirt. Yep. The emotions of these last 2 weeks, your fiery speech to your guys about how the brotherhood was tested and how you responded. I wonder how best you could take all of what you all have processed in the last 11 days and change and manifested it into this game tonight. How do you describe that?
Yeah, I mean, we're a brotherhood. And as Marshawn, you know, he lived by one love. And, you know, that's why I just told the guys before the game, like, let's play for one love. Let's play this one team, you know. And it's an honor, you know. It's a responsibility to carry the light when someone passes, but it's also an honor. And just let's go out there and control the things that we can and play like Marshawn did. And that was just with our effort, our intensity, flying to the ball. And I think in all 3 phases we did that. And it was such a complimentary win and something for us to build off of.
I told you when you sat down, I thought your words, I thought Shadi's words, I thought Solomon Thomas's thoughts about processing grief, not running from it, dealing with it. I think there's a strength in being weak, not weak, but being vulnerable. That's that's a better word. But you all are tough men that play an incredibly physical sport. What have these days and a couple of weeks been like, allowing yourselves to sort of surrender to whatever you're feeling and then channeling it into what is required?
Yeah, it was a lot of conversations, and you just said it about being vulnerable. It's not necessarily about, oh, I'm weak, but it's about being vulnerable. Oh. And, you know, to show courage, you have to show some kind of weakness, right? Or something that you need to overcome. And it was just a time for us to gather together, right? Understand that this game, it's bigger, right? It's about life and these connections that we're making, the brotherhoods, the friendships. We've got to be there for each other, regardless, on the field, off the field. And Marshawn was such a kind, loving, sweet soul that it hurt. It hurt everybody. But we're able to, as you said, face that grief and use that as a strength for us to move forward.
It's tricky, right? We're doing a show about a game, and yet we're trying to appropriately honor this young man's memory and all that he means to you. And then when the lights go out and then the lights come back on, you have to play a game.
Yeah.
For you personally, what do you feel like was on your plate to play to the level that you did, particularly in that first half, to be not just a vocal leader but the on-the-field leader? What was that like?
Yeah, I mean, for me, coming out here, this is where I have peace. This is where, you know, through my adversities and through my losses, like, this is where I heal.
And then, obviously, you guys are playing from a comfortable place, and that defense is really playing well. And I asked Troy what I want to ask you. The road gets real rugged. These are some excellent teams. Philly's coming in and big-time stages and Thanksgiving games and all the rest of it. But you're nodding your head with a smile on your face. I mean, what else could you ask for, right?
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what you play this game. And what the position that we're in, knowing we have to go on a run, let's play all the playoff teams to do that, right? If we want to give ourselves a chance, let's go in, let's heighten this focus. We've got something to play, obviously something much bigger to play for than ourselves. Let's channel that. Let's carry the light for Marshawn, and why not? Why can't we?
I know everybody talks about a game at a time, and I respect that, but I also think you in your case, I think you have to look at the big picture and understand what's required, and what's required is to continue to do this. And I just want to close with I mentioned what Solomon said, and I thought what your coach said was amazing. He said, we don't move on, but we move forward. And I was like, wow, that's heavy and that's real.
Yep.
That process of moving forward while not leaving that memory behind you, how much can that be wind in your sails as you guys set out on this course?
That's huge. And as I said, it's a responsibility and a privilege to carry that and to understand that, you know, when you're tired, when you're upset, when you're down, we've got a brother to keep playing for. We got a brother to push it for. And, you know, it's not about ourselves. It's about carrying on a legacy, a great legacy, and a great man in Marshawn Nealon. And we can do this. Why not? And like you said, it's not a one game at a time, but it's going to be a one play at a time. Focus each and every chance that we get and take advantage of our opportunities.
All right, I mentioned somewhere along the way about that emblem on your chest. It's an NFL Man of the Year that recognizes who you've been in this game, and I think a night like tonight, hearing how you led your guys that went out and played, I think that speaks to who you are as a guy. And there are a lot of eyes on you that might not have known the story, but as you guys sort of uplift the memory of a teammate and help those that are in need out there, I think it's a really important responsibility, but you're built for it, man, and I appreciate you.
Brother. Thank you. Bless.
So that was really good. That was with Dak Prescott, Scott Van Pelt, after last night's win with Dallas, beating a team that hasn't played very well this year, and their offense isn't good. But Dallas showed you what kind of firepower they have. They have a terrific offense. Their defense has not been good, and that's what's really held them back. But they can score some points, and who knows? If you win 2 of the next 3, you're certainly in the mix. It's tough. Philadelphia at home. Philadelphia's defense is awesome. I mean, they held Detroit to 9 points the other night. Detroit, who hung 44 on Washington, could have had more. Then they go with Kansas City coming to Dallas, so the next 2 are at home. Philadelphia and Kansas City, 2 teams that played for the Super Bowl last year. And then they go to Detroit. So if you get out of that gauntlet and you get 2 out of 3, then you're at 7 wins, and who knows? But maybe they are on that same type of kind of magical run. I don't know, magical is probably not the right word after you come off a tragedy, but just remembering that. It's hard to believe it's been that long. It's 18 years since that happened, 18 years ago that Sean Taylor was murdered, and how Washington responded to that, and the healing that kind of went on for the whole city, not just for the football team, but the fan base and everything else, that there was this kind of magic that was happening with a backup quarterback in Todd Collins, and they went on that run. Now, it had to come to an end, and Seattle was a much better team that year. I think Seattle went to the Super Bowl that season, and that was the end of the Joe Gibbs coaching era. But what a way to finish! What a way to do that, going from 5-7 to in the playoffs and not overcoming, but as I said, just as Brian Schottenheimer said, we move on. We don't get over it, but we move on, and that's kind of the way things. I mean, even if to this day, to people who were fans of the team at that time, you mentioned the name Sean Taylor, it has a haunting quality to it. Bram is coming up next. I'll see you back here tomorrow morning at 9 a.m.